Hello, welcome all students. In this video we're going to talk about how to graph this function, which is a secant function. This is transformation of the parent function secant x, horizontal translation pi over 2 because of the x minus pi over 2, and the vertical translation 1 unit up because of that plus 1 at the end. I'm going to show you a simple way to graph this function using the graph of the parent function. So here's the graph of the parent function that you should remember. Okay, we have a vertical asymptote at negative pi over 2. Okay, and we have an intermediate point at 0, that point which is a minimum. And we have another vertical asymptote at pi over 2. And we have another midpoint at pi, which is a maximum. And we have a vertical asymptote at 3 pi over 2. We're going to use these values and we're going to trace a table for x minus pi over 2. So we're going to transfer all the values for the secant function, these ones. We transfer them to this table for x minus pi over 2. Okay? Here, pi over 2, pi, and 3 pi over 2. I'm going to move this graph here. Make sure this graph is just next to you, or memorize it so you can use it to graph any function. Vertical asymptote, intermediate point, vertical asymptote, intermediate point, vertical asymptote. Now we get the values of x. To get that, we just do the transformation. Okay, so x minus pi over 2 plus pi over 2 gives x. So we need to add pi over 2. Okay, so we add pi over 2 to negative pi over 2 for the asymptote. Okay, and we get 0. We add to 0. Okay, and we get pi over 2. We add to pi over 2 and we get pi. Pi over 2 plus pi over 2 equals pi. And we add it to pi and we get 3 pi over 2. Just addition. And finally, we added the 3 pi over 2 to get 2 pi after simplification. Okay, now we have set the values of x. These are the values of x we need for the graph. Okay, now we just need to find the values of y. Okay, y for our function we want to graph this function. Right, so at 0 we have a vertical asymptote. And at pi over 2, we should just calculate the secant is 0 plus the 1 is 2. I explain here. So secant x minus pi over 2 plus 1. So secant x minus pi over 2, here in this case, x minus pi over 2 is 0. So the secant is secant of 0 plus 1. And secant of 0, okay, it's 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2. You can get it from the graph of secant, or you can use a calculator. 1 over cosine 0. You get 1 over 1 equals 1. Right, we got the value of y, which is what? 2. So we put it in the table. Now we find the value of y when x equals pi. Here we have x equals pi, a vertical asymptote, so you don't need to find the value of y. For the next intermediate point, okay, at 3 pi over 2, we calculate the same way. Okay, so at 3 pi over 2, we have negative 1 for the secant. Okay, so secant pi equals negative 1. Okay, so this value is negative 1 and we add 1. So negative 1 plus 1 equals 0. So my y is 0. Okay, at 2 pi we have a vertical asymptote, so we don't need to calculate the value of y because it's an infinite discontinuity. Now we are set. We have the table for x and y for our function. Okay, so all what I need is just to use this table and graph. So I set my axis, the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, I need to move it to the left because I start from 0. Okay, x equals 0 is vertical asymptote. This is my first asymptote. always start with the asymptotes. Okay, so I'm going to draw the second asymptote, which is at pi. Okay, x equals pi. So this is my second asymptote, vertical asymptote at x equals pi. Okay, now we draw the third asymptote, this one. Okay, so I draw, make sure you respect your scale. Okay, it's at 2 pi, so I'm moving in pi. Every gap of pi I have an asymptote. Now let's put the intermediate points. Okay, so this point at pi over 2, which is halfway between 0 and pi, the y coordinate is 2. So I have my point, and look at the graph of secant. I just copy it. That's it, and I got my graph. This part. We go to the next part now. Okay, we put the intermediate point at 3 pi over 2. We have y equals 0, 3 pi over 2. Make sure it's halfway between pi and 2 pi. Okay, just copy the graph of your secant for this part, and you get your graph. This is my graph. So I just copy it. That's it, and you're done. Very simple way. Okay, so we're going to look at what we get by using GeoGebra. This is what you get when you graph using GeoGebra. And I'm going to talk about the transformations applied. Okay, to show it, here I grabbed both of them. Okay, transformation, the secant, parent, and the new function. We have a horizontal translation, pi over 2 to the right, and we have a vertical translation, 1 unit up. This is the black graph, dotted black is for secant, parent function. Okay, so I have to move it. All these dots are the secant. I have to move it pi over 2 to the right. Pi over 2 is halfway between 0 and pi. Okay, so that's halfway. So it's pi over 2 to the right and 1 unit up. So from 1 to 2 is 1 unit up. So when you do this translation, you get your green graph for the new function, secant pi x minus pi over 2 plus 1. That's it. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.